It was a quiet afternoon at the downtown police station, the kind of silence that fills the air before something unforgettable happens. Keanu Reeves had walked in without security, without fame surrounding him, just a man in jeans, black boots, and a worn leather jacket. He was there for something simple, to renew a legal document connected to one of his charity foundations. He carried his usual calm smile, the kind that disarms strangers before they even realize who he is. But to Officer Grant, none of that mattered. Behind the front desk, Grant saw Keanu as just another guy with too much attitude. He didn't recognize him, or maybe he didn't want to. His eyes narrowed, his tone sharp. "You here for what exactly?" Grant asked, tapping the desk impatiently. "Just filing paperwork," Keanu replied softly. "It's a foundation document." Grant leaned forward. "You got ID?" Keanu nodded, handing it over politely. But Grant's gaze lingered longer than necessary, suspicion written all over his face. Without permission, he turned to the computer and started typing. A few clicks later, a folder labeled Private, Restricted Access appeared on the screen. He smirked. Well, what do we have here?" The other officers in the room looked up. Everyone knew that folder wasn't supposed to be opened without clearance. But Grant, inflated with ego and curiosity, double-clicked anyway. Keanu noticed. His expression unchanged, but his silence heavy. "Excuse me, officer," he said quietly. "Did you just open a private file?" Grant scoffed. "Relax, you think you're special? Nobody's above the law, not even you." For a moment, the entire station froze. The sound of the clicking mouse stopped. The air grew tense, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the officer, calm, unshaken, but with a depth in his eyes that made everyone else step back slightly. And then came the line that started it all, the moment that would echo far beyond that small police station. "You're right," Keanu said softly. "No one is above the law, including you, Hook." What Keanu said next made even the other officers freeze in disbelief. Officer Grant leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face as the private file loaded on the screen. The glowing monitor reflected off his badge, a symbol that at that moment meant nothing but arrogance. He began scrolling, eyes darting over personal documents and confidential notes. Well, he muttered under his breath loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like Mr. Fancy Actor's got some skeletons in his closet after all." Keanu stood motionless, his calm presence strangely louder than any words. Every officer in the room could feel the tension thickening. A young rookie nearby whispered nervously, "Sir, that's a restricted file. You're not authorized to open it." Grant shot him a glare sharp enough to silence him. "Don't teach me my job, rookie." He turned back to Keanu with mock confidence. "You people think fame makes you untouchable, but I've seen your type before, hiding behind donations and charity to look good." Still, Keanu said nothing. His silence wasn't weakness. It was control. It was the quiet before a storm that no one saw coming. The other officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some stepped away from their desks, pretending to work while secretly watching the scene unfold. They could see what was happening, an officer crossing a line that could cost him everything. Grant chuckled, scrolling further. Humanitarian project confidential, huh? Sounds like a cover-up to me." Keanu finally spoke, his voice steady and respectful. "Officer, you are accessing private government-verified documents without clearance. That's not procedure." "That's a violation," Grant scoffed. "Violation? I am the procedure." A beat of silence followed. Long, heavy, dangerous. Then Keanu took a slow step closer, not threatening, but firm. "Power doesn't make you right," he said quietly. "It only shows who you really are when you think no one's watching." The words hung in the air like thunder that didn't need to roar. The rookie officer lowered his gaze, clearly shaken by the truth in them. Grant tried to laugh it off, but the cracks in his confidence began to show. He slammed the file shut, muttering, "Just doing my job." "Your job," Keanu replied gently, "is to protect people, not invade their dignity." A hush swept across the room. Even the faint hum of the computers felt louder than anyone's heartbeat. The sergeant in the back stepped forward slightly, eyes narrowing at the monitor. He had seen enough. Something in his gut told him this moment wasn't going to end quietly. Engagement. Break. Have you ever seen someone abused by power? Let me know in the comments. And tell us, where in the world are you watching this from? Because what was about to happen next would turn that quiet station into the stage for a lesson the entire world would soon witness. The station's atmosphere had changed. What began as arrogance now felt like the calm before a storm no one wanted to face. Officer Grant leaned back in his chair, pretending he was still in control. But his hands were restless, fingers drumming on the desk, betraying the nervous energy beneath his bravado. Keanu stood in silence, not defiant, not afraid, just present, the kind of presence that made the whole room aware of itself. Still standing there, Grant snapped. You think you can intimidate me with that look? No, Keanu replied softly. I just wonder how far you'll go before you realize you're breaking everything your badge is meant to protect. Grant's face flushed red. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who remained so calm. The rookie shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the sergeant who hadn't said a word yet but was clearly observing. Grant raised his voice, trying to regain control. You're hiding something. That's why you came here alone. What's really in that file? Humanitarian reports, Keanu said. Projects that rebuild lives. Something I wish your tone could do? A faint murmur rippled through the room. The officers behind their desks looked down, embarrassed by their colleagues' behavior. Grant slammed his fist on the table. Don't get smart with me. I can take you down to the station basement right now for questioning. Keanu didn't flinch. You could, he said. But what would you tell your conscience afterward? That line cut deeper than any insult could. Grant froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. His pride burned hotter than his reason. He took a step closer, his voice dropping low, threatening. I don't care who you are. Out there you might be some movie star, but in here I'm the law. No, Keanu said quietly. You're supposed to serve the law. The station fell dead silent. Even the sergeant's pen stopped moving. A young officer at the far end discreetly raised his phone, recording the confrontation. He knew this wasn't going to end well, but it needed to be seen. Grant's eyes flickered toward the camera, realizing too late that every word, every illegal act, was now being documented. Still, his ego wouldn't let him back down. He jabbed a finger at Keanu's chest. You think people like you can come in here and lecture me? I think people like us, Keanu said slowly, can choose who we become, even when no one's watching. The power in his voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder through the quiet room. For the first time, Grant hesitated. His authority felt small, his anger hollow. The sergeant finally stepped forward. Officer Grant. In my office. Now. Grant turned sharply, glaring at Keanu one last time before storming off. But something in that glare was different. Not confidence. Fear. Keanu took a deep breath. The storm hadn't passed. It had only begun. Engagement line. If you were in Keanu's place, would you stay silent or speak up? Comment your answer below. The office door slammed shut behind Officer Grant, but the tension he left behind still filled the air like smoke. The younger officers exchanged uneasy glances. No one dared to speak, not yet. Keanu remained still, his calm expression unbroken, his eyes fixed quietly on the ground as if replaying what had just happened in his mind. Inside the captain's office, muffled voices could be heard. Grant was trying to justify his actions, his tone sharp and defensive. He was acting suspicious. I was just doing my job. The captain's voice came back low and firm. Your job doesn't include breaching federal privacy files, Grant. Do you have any idea what you just opened? Grant scoffed. Oh, come on, Captain. It's just some actor's PR nonsense. The captain cut him off immediately. That actor happens to fund government-supported rehabilitation programs and law enforcement charities. The file you opened was sealed under federal confidentiality. You just broke state code. A beat of silence followed. Then the sound of a chair scraping back. Out in the main room, the rookie officer leaned toward Keanu and whispered, Sir, I'm really sorry about all this. That file shouldn't have been touched. Keanu gave a faint, forgiving smile. Don't apologize for someone else's choices, son. Just remember them. The young man nodded, humbled. Suddenly, a low whisper began spreading through the room. One of the older officers near the back had been staring at Keanu for the last minute, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "Wait a second," he muttered. Is that Keanu Reeves?" Another officer looked up, confused. "The actor?" "Yeah," the older one said, realization dawning. "The John Wick guy. The guy who donated millions after the wildfires. He's that Keanu Reeves." Within seconds, the whisper spread like wildfire through the station. Heads turned. Phones suddenly came out of pockets. Murmurs filled the air. "That's really him? I thought he looked familiar. Oh my God, he's actually standing right here." The rookie looked back at Keanu, eyes wide. "Sir, why didn't you say anything?" Keanu smiled softly. "Because who I am shouldn't matter. Respect shouldn't depend on recognition." That single line silenced the room again. Even the whispers faded into stunned quiet. At that moment, the captain's office door opened. Grant stormed out, red-faced and trembling with anger. He didn't notice the change in the air, the way the entire station now looked at Keanu differently, with respect instead of indifference. He pointed at Keanu, still fuming. "You think this is over? You can't just walk in here and—" The captain interrupted, stepping into view behind him. "That's enough, Officer Grant." The tone in his voice was final, the kind that ends arguments and begins consequences. He turned to Keanu, his demeanor instantly respectful. "Mr. Reeves, I deeply apologize for this incident. The file that was accessed is legally protected under state confidentiality. This will be dealt with immediately." Grant froze, his face draining of color. His eyes flickered from the captain to Keanu, realizing finally who he had been talking to. Keanu didn't gloat. He didn't even look angry. He just nodded politely. "Thank you, Captain. But please, don't do this because of who I am. Do it because it's right." The captain paused and then nodded solemnly. "You have my word." As Keanu turned to leave, the whispers of awe and respect followed him quietly through the room. But behind him, Officer Grant stood motionless, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. The story wasn't over. The real reckoning was only beginning. The captain's office door remained slightly open, and the station fell into a heavy silence. The truth had settled, but the weight of it pressed on everyone's chest like stone. Officer Grant stood by his desk, his face pale, his jaw tight. The realization that he had illegally opened a confidential federal file and humiliated a man who had done nothing wrong was starting to crack through his pride. But instead of remorse, he reached for anger again, trying to mask the fear building inside him. "You think this changes anything?" He spat bitterly. "You think just because you're some celebrity I'm gonna bow down?" Keanu turned, his calm gaze finding him once more. His expression was soft but firm, like a father looking at a son who had lost his way. "I never asked you to bow," he said quietly. "I just expected you to remember why you wear that badge." Grant laughed mockingly. "Oh, spare me the lecture. You actors live in a fantasy world. You've got no idea what real life is like out here." "You're wrong," Keanu said. "I know exactly what real life feels like. I've seen people lose everything and still treat others with kindness." The words hit the air like a quiet truth no one could ignore. Even the rookie near the corner lifted his head, his eyes reflecting admiration. Grant shook his head and sneered. "You think being calm makes you better than me?" Keanu took a slow step forward. "No, it just means I don't let anger decide who I am." The station seemed to breathe with him. The hum of computers, the creak of old chairs, even the faint buzzing of the overhead lights, everything felt still, waiting. The captain watched closely. He could see what was happening. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a lesson unfolding in real time. Grant, unable to stand the quiet, lashed out again. "You talk about respect like it's some movie script. Out here, respect is earned through authority." Keanu stopped, inches away from him now. His voice lowered, steady and resonant. "Authority doesn't earn respect," he said. "Integrity does." That line pierced through every corner of the room. You could almost hear the words echoing in the silence that followed. Grant's hands trembled slightly, his mask of control fading. His eyes darted to the captain, then to the younger officers, all of whom were now silently standing with Keanu. Keanu took a breath, his tone softer but every word carrying weight. You wear that uniform to protect, not to humiliate. Every day people look at that badge and hope it means safety. But when you misuse it, you don't just dishonor the law, you dishonor everyone who still believes in it. A long pause. The captain swallowed hard, visibly moved. Even the rookie blinked rapidly, fighting to hide the emotion rising in his eyes. Keanu looked around the room. One day, he continued, someone weaker than me will stand where I'm standing, and they won't have a camera or a name or a voice. If they're treated the same way, that's on all of us. Grant said nothing. His arrogance had melted into shame. His breathing was heavy, his eyes red. A man realizing too late that he'd just undone his own pride. Keanu stepped back, turning toward the captain. You don't have to punish him for my sake. Just make sure this never happens again to anyone. The captain nodded, his voice quiet but full of respect. I will, you have my word. Keanu gave a small nod, then turned toward the exit where Jinky and two kids, visiting for a brief lunch, had appeared at the door, worry etched on their faces. His wife's eyes met his and she smiled faintly, proud. His kids ran up holding his hand. For the first time that day, Keanu smiled, a small, peaceful smile. As they walked out of the station, the officers watched in silence. None would forget what they had just witnessed. Not a celebrity's defiance, but a human being's dignity. The next morning, the police station was unusually tense. Conversations were quieter. Desks that usually buzzed with chatter now felt heavy with guilt and anticipation. Everyone knew what was coming. Officer Grant sat at his desk, a cup of cold coffee trembling in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot, he hadn't slept. His thoughts raced between anger, regret, and disbelief. He kept telling himself it wasn't fair, that he'd been set up. But deep down he knew the truth, he'd crossed a line that could never be erased. The captain's door opened. Two men in suits walked in, their badges flashing under the fluorescent lights, internal affairs. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Grant stiffened in his chair. Morning, Officer Grant, one of them said, voice calm but cutting. We need to speak with you in the conference room. He tried to act casual, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. This about yesterday? The other agent didn't answer. Please step inside. As the door shut behind them, the sound of silence filled the entire station. Even the rookie stopped typing, his hands frozen over the keyboard. Inside the conference room, the air was cold and formal. A laptop sat open on the table. A video paused on the screen. Grant immediately recognized it, the recording of his confrontation with Keanu Reeves. He swallowed hard. That was taken without authorization, he muttered. The agent hit play. The room filled with the sound of Grant's own voice, mocking, dismissive, and loud. Then Keanu's calm, steady replies echoed through the room, exposing every ounce of arrogance. When the video ended, one of the agents folded his hands on the table. Officer Grant, based on the evidence and your unauthorized access to a sealed federal file, we're recommending immediate termination from the department. Grant's breath hitched. You can't do that. The agent cut him off, his tone sharp. You illegally accessed private humanitarian documentation under federal protection. You verbally harassed a civilian. You abused your authority, and you did it in front of witnesses and cameras. You left us no choice. Grant slumped back in his chair. His badge felt heavy on his chest, no longer a symbol of pride, but of everything he'd lost. Do you understand these charges? Grant didn't respond. He stared at the table, jaw tight, eyes glassy. Then this meeting is concluded, the agent said. He placed a folder on the table, termination papers already signed. You're officially relieved of duty effective immediately. The words hit harder than any punch could. Grant looked at his badge one last time, then set it down beside the papers. The metallic clink echoed through the room. When he walked out, the station turned quiet again. Every officer who had once avoided Keanu's gaze now avoided his. Grant didn't meet anyone's eyes. He just walked, slowly, heavily, toward the exit. As the door closed behind him, the captain finally exhaled. Let this be a lesson, he said quietly. Authority without respect is just power waiting to destroy itself. Later that afternoon, the station doors opened again. It was Keanu. He wasn't there for attention, just to thank the young officer who had stood up quietly the day before. The rookie looked stunned. Mr. Reeves, I didn't do much. You did enough, Keanu said, smiling. You chose to do what's right when no one else did. That's courage. They shook hands. The moment was simple, but the entire station watched, realizing how humility carried more weight than any rank or reputation. That evening, news broke across every platform. Keanu Reeves confronts corrupt cop, teaches a lesson in respect and integrity. Clips of his calm responses flooded social media. Millions praised his composure, his grace, and his refusal to retaliate. Even the police department released a public apology, admitting fault and promising reform. As for Keanu, he said nothing to the press. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than any headline could. But before he left the station that day, he paused at the door and turned back to the captain. I hope what happened here reminds everyone. Respect isn't given by title. It's shown through action. The captain nodded deeply. It already has, Mr. Reeves, it already has. Keanu stepped out into the sunlight, his figure calm against the glow of the afternoon sky. He didn't win through anger or revenge. He won through integrity. And that victory would echo far beyond that station's walls. By the next morning, the story had spread across the world like wildfire. It started with a single clip, the video recorded by the young rookie inside the station. A shaky camera, muffled voices, and then Keanu's calm words cutting through the noise. Power doesn't make you right. It only shows who you really are when you think no one's watching. The clip lasted less than a minute, but that minute shook millions. By noon, the video had reached over 10 million views. By evening, it was everywhere. On news channels, social media, talk shows, and forums across every continent. Hashtags like respect like Keanu and justice over ego trended for days. People didn't just watch the video. They felt it. They saw in his quiet composure something missing from the modern world. Dignity under pressure. News anchors replayed the footage, breaking it down moment by moment. Psychologists analyzed his body language. Former officers called it a masterclass in self-control. But to Keanu, it wasn't a performance. It was simply who he was. A few days later, Keanu sat alone in a quiet corner of a cafe, away from the noise of fame and headlines. He had turned down interviews, press conferences, and media deals. He didn't want to capitalize on what had happened. He wanted people to remember the message, not the man. A woman approached his table, mid-40s, eyes tired but kind. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you." Keanu looked up, gently smiling. "For what?" "My son, he's 16. He saw that video. He's wanted to join the police since he was little. After watching what you said, he told me, 'Mom, I'll be the kind of officer people can trust.'" Keanu's eyes softened. He nodded. "That means more than any headline ever could." The woman left and Keanu sat there quietly, looking out the window as the sun set over the city, golden light spilling across the street like hope returning after a long night. Meanwhile, at the police station, the ripple effect continued. The young rookie, the one who had filmed the incident, was called into the captain's office. He entered nervously, unsure what to expect, but instead of reprimand, the captain smiled faintly. "Son," he said, "what you did took courage. You reminded us what this badge stands for." The rookie exhaled, relief washing over him. "I just didn't want to see it happen again, sir." The captain nodded. "Neither do I. Starting today, we're implementing mandatory ethics training across all departments. Respect, accountability, and restraint. Because of you, and because of him." He pointed toward the TV on the wall, where Keanu's interview snippet played on a news channel. "No one should be judged by appearance," Keanu was saying. "We all have the same right to dignity, no matter who we are or where we come from." That night, Keanu finally agreed to record one short message. Not for fame, not for damage control, but for truth. He sat before a simple camera setup. No lights, no makeup, no Hollywood polish. Just him in his usual black shirt speaking from the heart. "The world doesn't need more anger," he began softly. "It needs accountability. It needs kindness that doesn't depend on recognition. We all make mistakes. I've made plenty. But what defines us isn't power or pride. It's what we choose to do when we realize we were wrong. He paused, eyes thoughtful, voice sincere. Respect is stronger than authority. And dignity, that's something no one can take from you. He ended with a simple line that became the heartbeat of the movement. No one should be judged by appearance. Judged by actions, by character, by heart. When he posted the video, he didn't expect what came next. Within 24 hours, millions around the world typed a single word in the comments, a word that echoed like a quiet revolution. Respect, from students to soldiers, from teachers to police officers. People everywhere shared the hashtag #TypeRespect with stories of humility and courage. In classrooms, teachers played Keanu's video as a lesson on empathy. In police academies, instructors quoted his lines during ethics training. Even world leaders mentioned his composure during press briefings. Keanu hadn't meant to start a movement, but he had. Weeks later, he was walking through a park in LA when a small boy ran up to him, holding his mother's phone. "Mr. Keanu," the boy said breathlessly. "My mom said you taught people to be kind." Keanu knelt down, smiling warmly. "I didn't teach them," he said softly. "They already knew. I just reminded them." The boy grinned. "I told my teacher to type respect." Keanu chuckled, tousling the boy's hair. "That's the best kind of message, kid." As the boy ran back to his mother, Keanu stood under the fading light, the city glowing behind him. He didn't look like a hero. He didn't need to. He had proven that the quietest strength is the kind that changes the loudest hearts. And somewhere in that stillness, between justice and grace, Keanu Reeves had reminded the world of something timeless. That respect isn't a reaction. It's a choice. Final call to action. If you believe in respect, fairness, and dignity, type respect in the comments. Because real strength isn't shown by power, it's shown by compassion.